everyone. I would like to welcome you all to our 5th event of ArchiDesign Talks in the fall semester of 2020, organized by the Faculty of Architecture and Design at Bahçeşehir University. Today we have Mehmet Kütükçüoğlu as guest for presenting the recent works of his office, Teğet Architects. And I would like to thank him for accepting our invitation, and it is an honor for us to host him. My name is Göksun Akyürek Altürk, and I'm a full-time instructor at Bahçeşehir University. Today I will be moderating this event with the collaboration of Semra Horus. She's also teaching at our faculty as part-time instructor. And now I will leave the floor to Semra to continue with her presentation.
Thank you, Göksun. Welcome, Mehmet Bey, and all the other guests. Welcome to our evening today. I will very briefly introduce Mehmet Kütükçüoğlu and leave him the screen, actually. Even though it is not necessary, but I think for everyone it will be a great start. Mehmet Kütükçüoğlu is graduated from Middle East Technical University, Ankara, and then holds his master's degree from SciArc University in Los Angeles. In addition to working prominent firms, he also worked as lecturers and teach in institutions like SciArc University, Middle East Technical University, Yıldız Teknik University, and Istanbul Technical University. And he is the co-founder of Teğet Mimarlık and continue working as such. And he and his firm won many awards from local and international competitions, and also he produced literary works in, again, local and international publications in Turkey and globally. So thank you, Mehmet Bey, and without further ado, I will give the screen to you. Yeah, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. When I will share my screen, I think my image will be gone, right? So yes. I apologize for this, but you don't need me, you need the screen, actually. So, hope it works. Fingers crossed. So how is it?
It's working, yes, I think. We see your screen.
It is working, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So, all right. Okay. So, now you have my desktop, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, it says Teğet, preservation versus transformation, right?
Yes.
We see it. Okay, everything is working just fine. Today I'm going to talk about only one building, which is the Yapı Kredi Kültür Sanat. I presented, made this presentation a couple of times before. I don't know if I would like to apologize to those that have seen this presentation before, but I hope that it's an unknown presentation for most of you. I don't know how it is.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it, okay?
No.
Me neither. So
All right. Okay. So this is a photograph taken during the inauguration of the building, maybe 1 or 2 days after, and you see Istiklal Street is not in good shape then. This was in 2017, right? And we won a couple of awards, both nationally and internationally. Nationally, this received the Architects Chamber's National Prize, and also it received another prize from Architectural Review magazine, New into Old, and it made the front, the cover page of the magazine. Okay, so probably most of you have seen the building and know the district that it is placed. It is in BAU and on Istiklal Street, right? So can you see my cursor? The hand? Can you see it?
I don't see it. Ah, okay, now I see it.
You see it?
Yes.
All right. So this is a map from 19th century, a map of Beyoğlu. This is Taksim, and this part is Tünel, and the building is situated right in the middle, where the avenue, the boulevard, is refracted. Today, it's right in front of Galatasaray High School, Lisesi. And the area, the urban space, we call it Galatasaray Square, right? So Beyoğlu is an important urban, let's say, fabric remaining from 19th century. We don't have so many urban fabrics intact remaining from 19th century in Turkey. This is, in that sense, Beyoğlu is a very unique place. And it has a certain, let's say, urbanistic style to it, which is still present there today. This is a close-up to the urban fabric. It's highly dense, and as you see, it's made of, let's say, attached apartment buildings in, I would say, French style. Here, if you can still see the cursor, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so many of the buildings, they have a definitive size, kind of the unit is almost anonymous, and they face the urban realm with only one facade. In the back, in this map, it doesn't show the urban void, but the back facade, they usually, they are back to back, and there's a very limited space in the back. The back facade gets light and air from the back facade, from the backyards. But the main facade is onto the urban space, which are the streets and the boulevards of Beyoğlu. And on the right-hand side, these photographs are taken from İstiklal Caddesi Boulevard, and there's a let's say, typical section of the boulevard with its width and height. As you can see, it's like an urban room there, and it's quite consistent. Even the buildings changed throughout the years, still it maintains its 19th century character. And here are some photographs from 1950s and earlier. And if you look at the boulevard today, it's more or less similar scenery. Program-wise, the building is the arts and culture building with a conglomeration of related, let's say, programmatic mixture. And we tried to mark throughout İstiklal Caddesi, on and around it, similar, let's say, similar programs, especially by institutions or banks. But this doesn't mean that it's everything in terms of arts and culture, because these are, let's say, the anchors of arts and culture program. Otherwise, you know, there are a lot of little galleries or production spaces in the district, in BAU district. And Yapı Kredi, which is marked by red color, is right in the middle of the boulevard. This is another map showing you again the 19th century situation, and our building is here, which has gone through a series of transformations that I will show you. But in the beginning, it was not really a square or even an enlargement of urban space, just the T-junction of two main, let's say, urban boulevards. One is İstiklal Street. Then it was called Grand Rue d'Opéra. And the other street, and here is the junction, right at the corner of Galatasaray Lisesi. And a postcard showing you a neoclassic three-story building right at that junction, which is this one. And coming into the 20th century, things started to change a little bit. At the corner of the gate, the Galatasaray School, there is this Karakol, the police station, which is a single-story building, and a couple of auxiliary buildings and the gate. Here still, we don't have that enlargement. But in the back, where our building is located, it is composed of two buildings, and as you see, one passage connecting Rue d'Opéra and the back street, which is, you know, the street probably most of you know, where Ara Cafe is, right? The chairs and tables are along this wall. And here is another photograph from 1950s, the older 19th century neoclassic building replaced by this one, again, another neoclassic building. But as you see, the police station is no more there. Therefore, there's this wedge-shaped enlargement in the urban space, right in front of the school walls, the school garden, and the gate. And as you see, it is not a pedestrian street then. It was a vehicular boulevard. and you see the deflection of the street right at this wedge-shaped urban space. And towards the end of 1950s, the property was bought by Kazım Taşkent, the founder of Yapı Kredi Bankası Bank, to rebuild the headquarters of the bank. And he hired German architect Paul Schmidtner for this commission, because he had some connections to Germany and Switzerland, Kazım Taşkent. And then, of course, the banks were not so big, and of course, it was a kind of a startup enterprise. They did not need real big buildings like today. So they could fit the headquarter program into this corner lot. And Paul Schmidtner, he's an interesting architect. He was famous, especially before the war, but after the war, apparently he did not have so many commissions, but he was Paul Bonatz's friend, and probably Paul Bonatz was instrumental. He introduced Paul Schmidtner to Kazım Taşkent. And as you see the construction of the building, he designed this neo-rationalist style building. You see so many of these in Central Europe. And this is showing you the completion of the construction. As I said, it's in the style of neo-rationalists, very disciplined, rhythmical facade treatment. On the ground level, the building has porticos. Upper levels, the grid facade, opening the office space to the urban realm. And this is the plan. As you see, the portico is L-shaped. One is facing İstiklal Caddesi, the other is facing the other street. I forgot the name of the street now. I apologize. But the building is a corner building, and it has exactly the same treatment. So it turns the corner with the same, let's say, facade configuration. And inside the portico, you have entries. Of course, as you see in the middle of it, there's this courtyard type of space, which is the main space of the bank. And on upper floors, this is, it is, let's say, double height space, and it is covered, and on top, it's a courtyard illuminating the inner, let's say, office spaces surrounding it. That was the simple structure. Coming into 80s and 90s, of course, the bank is growing larger and larger. The political situation in the world is also changing. Now we are going into an era of neoliberalist governments. And there's a lot of global circulation of finances. Therefore, the bank grew really big. And as you see in this photograph, you know, think of this pipe as the dividing line. They purchased the adjacent lot, and they applied the same principles to the adjacent lot. So it became double the size of the original Schmidtner building. So it becomes double Schmidtner building. And of course, because the headquarters later on moved to Büyükdere Caddesi, they introduced an art gallery. Maybe you remember those days. The art gallery, actually, it was occupying almost the whole ground floor. In the corner, there was this Yapı Kredi bookshop. Maybe some of you would remember. And on upper floors, it's a mixture of private banking, publishing house, let's say, or a library for old books kind of program, kind of a mixture of business and cultural program. And in towards the end of 90s, there was a merger. The bank was sold from one family to the other, from Çukurova to Koç, and also the Italian Unicredit was partner for Koç, for Yapı Kredi Bank. And this building was one of the negotiation items. So what happened was this, the corner, the original Schmittener part, remained in the hands of Yapı Kredi Bank, and the extension, later extension, remained on Çukurova holding side. So what happened was, you know, all the programs that were distributed throughout the larger complex had to be compressed in the corner building in almost like an disorganized, haphazard manner. So the art gallery moved there with the bookshop and all the other programs. So it was like a cramped, jammed building. Plus, the building built in towards the end of 1950s, it did not acquire contemporary, let's say, services and building standards that agree with international standards. So it's 3 meter by floor to floor height, not enough today. Plus, you know, very limited elevators, no proper mechanical equipment, both for fire or for, let's say, air conditioning. Not enough shafts, not enough vertical shafts in it. It needed to be reevaluated for contemporary purposes and building standards. And it was an urgent situation. So the year, it was, I think, the year 2000, what does it say, 9 or so, 9 or 10, the bank decided to organize a limited an invited competition among prominent architects of Istanbul, problematizing this situation. And the main purpose was to recreate a flagship building that is mainly an arts and culture building, but with the possibility of the existing bank branch on the ground floor. Later on, we managed to do without the branch. So we removed the branch and completely reserved the building for arts and culture purposes. And this was the first sketch I did. It's interesting because it was the first sketch, maybe the first week or the second week, I don't know. But it looks very much like the final product. That's why it's very striking to me. And the idea is diagrammatized like this in plan, the urban idea. As you see, or if you remember, the building, the Schmittener building, was a very disciplined, kind of a nice, disciplined building, but it did not communicate in a powerful sense to the urban space, because it was one of the very unique buildings in BAU that had two main facades facing the urban space. I showed you before, most of the buildings were facing the urban space with only one facade, and this is a corner building, and it uses two facades to open up to the urban space. But the urban space is not, let's say, well-defined urban space. It's a slight enlargement of the boulevard in a wedge shape, as you see it here, and that is exactly in the dimension of the second facade that is facing the square. Therefore, before we have been using the word Galatasaray Square for this urban space, but it did not really feel like urban square. So we thought maybe, a treatment on the second facade would start a new type of communication, so that it would be like a mutual relation between the urban space and the building, so that they enlarge and define each other. That was the idea. And here I must stress or mention the fact that this was also for us a provocative, let's say, design move, both for public and architects, because this building was not listed. It was a modern building and it was not listed. So the main expectation was to demolish and rebuild a totally new building. What we deliberately decided not to demolish it entirely, but to transform it radically. It has a couple of, let's say, intentions. One intention is Istanbul has become a city where, it has been rebuilt over and over from scratch, so that we cannot recognize the older spaces, our childhood, anymore in the city. All the let's say traces are removed from urban space. So we wanted to preserve certain traces. Plus, that was a kind of a provocation against rebuilding from scratch. So it was an intentional preservation move from an architect who is not a restorator. The second provocation is this. If you are preserving something, it means it is listed and they don't allow you to transform it radically. So we wanted to show that, preserving, but also transforming can be performed in a single building, or let's say in an urban entity. And this was a unique chance for us to explore that possibility. We are preserving it, but radically transforming it. And that was the idea. So we thought, we start with the second facade because it's a corner building. We preserve one facade, which is the boulevard facade, Istiklal Street facade, which is like, let's say, a shell. And also the facade on the Ara, the back street. But radically changing the facade, actually removing it, that is facing Galatasaray Square, and somehow flood it with the urban space that it would assume. So that both the building and the urban space get larger, and they share via this building the same space. That was the idea. And the chance was it was facing northeast, because we wanted to put a screen there, but it's just a screen. It's not a division between interior and exterior space. It's just a screen, let's say, for gas, because it's a very lively place in terms of political upheavals. And that screen would not create greenhouse effect because it's not facing south or west. Otherwise, it could be really dangerous for interior spaces. So we used this chance, because it's facing north and northeast. And this is to show you in plan and in section, very diagrammatically, how we reorganize the program. On the left-hand side, up is the plan, and underneath we put the sections, and we divide. On the left, it's the building prior, and on the right-hand side, it is our proposal. What we had in the prior, we had a central courtyard which was not functioning because it was too deep, let's say, too narrow, not spacious enough, and it was also, filled here and there, that it never functioned. So we removed this courtyard and used this void in section and plan in this brownish color, so that the urban space is used it as the extension of urban space that is creeping in the building three-dimensionally. So it's not a self-contained internal courtyard anymore, but it is a space that is between the building and the urban space, and that has the capacity to be both. Plus, the other move, which was an important move, the scattered and dysfunctional services are organized compacted on the right-hand side, which is denoted by the blue color, and let's say modernized, I would say, so that it can meet the contemporary requirements. So we need additional fire stairs, additional elevators, especially for big loads, new shafts, and so on. So it became a better serviced building without, as you see, losing much space for the program, which is marked here by the color white. In the older building, it's a lot more fragmented. In the new proposal, it's much more compact and larger in terms of surface area. So by reorganizing it, even giving a large portion of to the city, we still come up with larger program space just by the act of reorganizing. It is important. And this is how we do. We propose this. We use, you know, on the upper left corner, you see the existing building, the building before, I would say. And what we do is we introduce a very strong beam on this facade on top, so that we can eliminate the facade and the floors attached to it, and rebuild that void again in order to come up with the final result. As you see, the facade is not only a facade. It is the, let's say, interface of a three-dimensional grid inside the building, which is composed by columns and floors, verticals and horizontals. The facade is an outcome of this three-dimensional grid inside, and we use that grid. Even we replaced most of these later on because they proved not to be sturdy enough for earthquake, especially for earthquake loads. These use the same three-dimensional grid that has the interface on the facade. So it becomes, the shape becomes the structure, the spatial, let's say, grid inside the building. And this diagram is showing, this is, let's think of it as a section and plan. It is showing that although this is not a very big building, it is, let's say, in the size of a large apartment building. It has a variety of cultural programs in it, and it's three-dimensional. Usually, these arts and culture structures are very horizontal buildings organized in a horizontal manner. This time we are in Beyoğlu, and these programs are, they have to be stacked three-dimensionally in order to be compacted within this cube volume. And this is showing you, it's almost like a very intricate three-dimensional puzzle of spaces that are coming together in order to create this agglomeration of cultural programs. And the outcome we call it is a microcosm, small microcosmic environment, where, because each separate element of the program has a baggage of architectural, let's say, precedents in the architectural history. They are coming from different, let's say, spatial sensibilities, spatial and tactile sensibilities. For example, it has a bookstore in it, and we are thinking of these mighty 19th century libraries throughout the world, whereas, you know, we have the performance hall, and its foyer is, strange enough, it's in the back, not front, in the back of the performance hall, because the performance hall is directly facing the urban space. So we designed it like the backstage or the urban loggia that is replaced by our performance hall. This is, let's say, from Isfahan, the urban loggia of the music house facing the main square of Isfahan, and the main, let's say, circulation facing the square is just like the ziggurat thing that is receding towards the heights of it, the peak of it. So it has, let's say, different eras, different understanding, different tactile qualities, materials, colors. All these spaces have different worlds or connotating different worlds, and they are coming together to create a microcosmic unity within a single stone shaft. And this is showing you somehow that variety. It has the art gallery in it, a bookshop, a library, the bookshop in the form of a library, the performance hall, and so on. So all these different spaces are coming together three-dimensionally to recompose the volumetric cube of the building. And you know, this plan is from the loggia level, not ground level plan, because this plan is showing you the structural grid and its relation to the facade, and also layering of the spaces, you know, the back part, the services, the middle part, the main body of program spaces, and the part behind the screen, the climbing, the vertical circulation facing Galata Square. And two sections. This is a section from Istiklal Street to the back street. As you see, you know, you can really trace the existing courtyard within the building and how it is used. The existing courtyard is subdivided into several pieces so that it creates volumetric spaces inside the program spaces, because they are really, you know, if you go there, because we need to stick to the older grid of the building, some of the spaces are really compressed, because we also need a lot of mechanical equipment on the ceilings and on the floors. So in order to comfort these compressed spaces, we introduced larger volumetric spaces right in the middle, so that it's always an oscillation between cramped and volumetric spaces. And in the end, you arrive to this multi-purpose hall, performance hall, which is also in the form of an urban space right on the 4th floor, surrounded by urban facades. As you see, the exterior facade becomes also the interior facade in this building. Especially, it's very obvious on this loggia. That is creating the ambiguity between inside and outside, between the city space and the building space, because they are diffused into each other. It also has other it also brings other qualities, like I'm introducing light so that these spaces become very transparent looking from outside. And on top, we use the whole floor as the publishing office of Yapı Kredi. This is the section, the reverse section, showing you how we gradually use the vertically stacked cultural programs via the vertical circulation pattern facing the square. This is the screen, and we have this, let's say, zigzagging ramps, and on each landing it meets another program. One of the landing is, of course, reserved for the famous Akdeniz sculpture by İlhan Koman. And on top it culminates. This is the loggia space, which is also the extension of the urban space, but used as the multi-purpose hall, performance hall. But that is also conceived by us as the continuation of the urban space inside the building. And here are plans. This curved facade is facing Istiklal, and this flat, where the screen is facing Galatasaray Square. You see on the ground, it's not an atrium. It's only you take only the first flight, and going up, you gradually the space opens up. So it's that kind of a space. It's not a complete void starting from ground. And as you see in the back, you know how the services are organized. The ground floor is basically reserved for a larger bookstore for Yapı Kredi. It even has a place for children, and also a kind of a little multi-purpose hall for the talks, also a little cafe. It uses a double space right in the center where the entry is, and upper floor of the bookstore is only these galleries surrounding the central space. And as you see, it is surrounded by this U-shaped museum that is exhibiting the collections of the bank. You know, these collections, it's a, let's say, a variety of collections, from very old textile to very old coins, vases and objects. So they have a big collection, and we cannot even exhibit all of them at the same time, so some of them remain in the storage. So they keep changing this museum. But the interesting thing is the museum is surrounding the bookstore, and I will show you later, eventually creating these juxtaposed, let's say, perceptions. From the museum, I see the bookstore. From the bookstore, I see the portico. And from the portico, I see the street. So there are, in a couple of, let's say, sections, there are these juxtaposition of perceptive openings. So in that sense, it brings you a feeling of transparency between the urban space and through the spaces that are organized inside the building. And from this ground floor, you also understand, first we reintroduced the portico, which was claimed before in 90s and became the interior spaces. We reopened the porticos. We built these folding doors, so during the daytime, they open up all these doors so that you first enter the portico and then you find several entries. This entry for the service areas, the elevators and so on, the bookstore, and from portico, the flight of stair takes you to this, let's say, space that is the continuation of the urban space, because portico is also like that. So the urban surface folds up via these stairs to reach reach a three-dimensional level inside the building. Okay, so going up, as you see, the space, the atrium gets larger and larger. And at each floor, for example, this is the entry for the gallery space. It's a double height space in the middle, surrounded by it's almost like a courtyard inside this gallery space. On upper floor, it's again the gallery, and also you have Akdeniz, the sculpture here on this landing. And the final arrival is this area where the performance hall is, and through these doors, it's like the backstage. I told you, in the back there's this foyer, and from the foyer you enter the performance hall, which is facing directly the urban space. The upper floors are more private, more protected. That's why the main circulation stops here. You can only reach these areas. For example, this is like a library for scholars with rare books. You can, use these spaces only via, let's say, rendezvous, and you use the elevators and the stairs to reach these spaces. They are close to general public. And one more floor is using the whole floor for the publishing company. It's very crowded, very busy space. They make the books for you create a bookstore. Okay. And here are some photographs. As I told you, this is from the photograph 2017, right after the inauguration. Istiklal Street was not in very good shape then. When we opened this building, it's kind of shocking because this facade was covered and we opened it in one day. It's a super transparent facade. It's 20 meters by 20 meters, and we used special glass, which is very transparent, and also a very transparent, let's say, structure. The cables are 3 centimeters in diameters, and they are stretched. They are in there's this very sturdy frame here. We rebuilt that frame. It's very durable, very sturdy, and we stretch these cables both X and Y direction so that they can hold each other and hold the glasses. So it became a very slender, very transparent 20 meter by 20 meter facade. And this transparency is also enhanced by, as I told you before, the quality of lighting inside the building, because the exterior facade becomes the interior facade. There's always daylight inside the spaces. And once you have light behind the screen, it becomes very transparent. So this second facade facing the square really creates the shock and let's say revelation of the urban space that is long been there. And I would say after building this, it also generated some kind of optimism among the citizens, because then, if you remember, there were many bombs going off all around the city, and it was very depressing. And Istiklal Street was flooded with tourists, no content on the street. And this building was built, and people thought, okay, you know, things can start improving again, or can get improving again. We only have to work. So, and luckily, the street was refurbished. It was paved again, and I think some of the spaces on Istiklal Street or in the back streets are refurbished again, revived. And if you go there today, I mean, before pandemics, of course, it was very lively again. So this was part of that wave that started to restore the urban quality, because Istiklal Caddesi or Beyoğlu has that urban quality, even if the space or the feeling of the space gets deteriorated, because the physical space is there, it will never die down, but it will be revived again sometime in the future. It also has that capacity because the physical space is already there. That's very important. Okay, so I will show you some more photographs. These are very early in the morning. I think that's why it's not very crowded. The doors are closed, but you can observe those qualities from these photographs, the transparencies, the rhythms, the old building and the new building, the old facade and the new facade. Of course, all of them transformed radically. It's a new building now. Just to show you certain details of that screen facade, and from the facade you see the portico that is serving this circulatory space. And when the doors are folded, from the portico you see the street. Yes, and inside the portico you have the facade of the bookstore. It's not a very big space, but it's kind of, it's not these contemporary bookstores like part of the shopping genre, but it's more like it gives you the feeling of a library. And the many books are, you know, we designed the shelves in a way that, you know, you can use them in both ways. They can be horizontal or, let's say, diagonal. So when you use them diagonal, you can put all the books with all the covers facing the space. So it's all, you know, covered by the covers of the walls are made up of the covers of the books here in this space. And gradually you climb up. As I told you before, the space gets enlarged. You also see the interior facade becomes, the exterior facade becomes the interior facade. There's this ambiguity between inside and outside. And this space is, of course, not a real interior space because it's not climatized. it is the air of the city. It's not heated, it's not cooled. There's just this screen I told you, just for the gas. Otherwise, it's the city's space and the air of the city inside this space. Therefore, you have doors directly opening to this kind of atrium space from each distinct cultural program. This is the museum surrounding the bookshop. As you see from the window case, you see the bookstore, the portico, and the street. Sorry. All of a sudden, a whitewashed gallery space with the double height in the middle. The double height is also good for larger objects or paintings. Also, it somehow unites the two floors of the gallery space. And on one wing of the gallery, there's this nice surprise, this window. And through this window and through Akdeniz sculpture, you see the urban space. See, looking through the window, you see this, the back of the sculpture, and through the sculpture, you see the city. And, you know, this placement of the sculpture is interesting because it gives you additional perspectives how to perceive the piece, from top, from down, from behind, from front, from oblique perspective. So it somehow increases the experience of the piece. And when we go up, the promenade, vertical promenade, culminates in the loggia, where the performance hall is, and the performance hall is directly facing the city. And behind the performance hall, as I told you before, just like the backstage, it's the foyer. The foyer is also an alternative exhibition space. And this 3-floor high performance hall, it's almost like a little square up in the air. And similar things on upper floors, we have this library. This time it's all completely whitewashed library. And through the library table, you see the performance hall and the atrium and the city. So there are these, again, here you catch those serious juxtapositions of perceptions, one after the other, between the city and the interior of the building. Yes, and nighttime, of course, with artificial lighting, it becomes even more transparent. The building becomes like a transparent box. I think this is about it. The end of my presentation. Maybe I stop sharing, and
okay,
then
we can continue with the questions if you like.
And then, yeah, we can, talk about, discuss things that you would like to raise. Okay? Should I stop the sharing?
Yes, we can see you live.
All right. So, hold on. So, and can you see me now? Yes. You will see me now. All right.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it was a very stimulating presentation for the listeners, who are mostly our students. And I would like to also talk about our own experience as a studio survey. We had a site visit to this building several years ago because our topic in the first year design studio was promenade. So the students were asked to design a promenade, and we thought about what examples we have in the city. And actually, you never used the term promenade for this inner staircase, but
I used it once in the presentation.
We conceived it as an urban promenade in a way,
Yeah.
Because I think it fits to that description. So we visited the building with our first year students, and also it has many concepts related with first year design studio, the solid void relationship, permeability, openness, and many others you have mentioned. So I believe it's a very special experience for all the citizens, and it's a landmark already. I think it was also very good presentation for showing our students about research-based design, because we see the overall research process you have made, and also your design process, how you reflected on the issue, on the program, how you started conceiving and how you ended. And I see that you have a deep connection with the building. It is, perceivable. Okay, so thank you very much. And now, actually, I would like to ask our audience if they would like to pose some questions. We can maybe continue with the questions from the audience.
Mhm.
There is already a hand raised, Göksun.
Yes. Yes, one of our students, Daniel. Okay, Daniel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, but we can't see you, Daniel.
I'm not in a position where I can open my camera right now. Sorry for that.
All right.
Yeah, thank you a lot for your presentation, and thank you for the experience that you brought to the city, and the energy that you tried to deliver. I received it in real life, and it's quite a unique experience. I have only one concern as a student. It's really it got my eyes. The first sketch you did, how you sketched the first one, and it turned almost as if it's the last finished result. Like, did you have some type of, I don't know how to explain it, like a dream set, or what did you feel like drawing this first sketch?
You know,
Because it's almost like the left wing of the building. It's almost taking half of the side, half of the mass in section and in plan. So I
Yeah.
really want to get how it ended almost as the same as the first sketch. Thank you.
Yes. It doesn't happen all the time like this. That's why I especially, stress this this sketch, because sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes you make a lot of sketches, and you can experience a lot of transformation from your first idea. But this time, the first sketch resembles very much the final product, and that's very striking. uh, I don't think it's a virtue or merit. It just happens to be like that, you know. But it shows, uh, mm, at least to me, it shows some kind of uh, um, determination behind the final result. Because we had to fight really hard for many things here in this building. For, you know, our fight was not really against the client, but more to, let's say, to the municipality, to Heritage Council, and so on, just in order to realize this building. So it took a lot of determination, stubbornness, you know, hard work in order to realize the first stage, and that's kind of revealing.
I understand. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. Any other questions? You can directly ask, or if you prefer, write on the chat box. We will try to follow your questions. And if not, Mehmet Bey, maybe I can just briefly introduce our, again, experience with Göksun about our short preparation for this moderation. We both teach in the course Contemporary Turkish Architecture, and we ask our students to pose you or consider questions to ask you. And we received more than 30 questions, actually. We really, we received a lot of ones. Of course, don't worry, we won't ask all of them. And we try to group the highlights of the questions, because there are really some focal points on that. And one question was about directly this building. So I think I would like to pose that. It was asked by Sarah Abuzaina, I think. She asked how you managed, or what was the challenges of building a structure in such a historic context. And secondly, she asked about the difficulties of designing a museum space for different kind of museums exhibits, because she said she has been there a lot, and each time the exhibits in the gallery spaces altered, and it strikes her attention. So she posed the question about designing a display space for a variety of exhibits, variety of objects and artworks. So.
Okay, so the historical context here, it is not a very homogeneous one. As I showed you, it's basically, it has the spirit of 19th century urbanism. The boulevard and street and dense urban fabric type of urbanism, with the apartments, the French style apartments. But it's not homogeneous. Like, of course, through the Republican area, there has been certain transformations. And one of the major transformations was on this square that I wanted to show you. Even the space changed, the buildings changed, but we treated the building because the value judgments sometimes are not justified. For example, a building from 1950s, 60s is not considered to be a building that is worth preserving, but we don't see it like that, because it has a character. Even though you might not like the character, it has a character. You might say even, the fascists use these style, okay, but it has a character. So preserving certain characters, but also playing on them, is a very good exercise in urban space. We did not start from scratch, but as I told you, we worked and played with an already existing 3D, I wouldn't say it a facade, an already existing three-dimensional grid. And if you go there to see the building, you see certain, let's say, certain angles. It's not perfect, the grid. So in order to play with the idea of the three-dimensional grid and the facade, we had to introduce certain slight angles, so there are little discrepancies, little, let's say, here and there, certain imperfections. That was really fun, you know. So we found our traces to recreate ourselves and what we think into an already existing urban space, and that's I think it's a nice way to re-inhabit a historical context. That would be my answer for the first question. The other is, as I told you, this was the building is composed of interior spaces that are transformed from the already existing three-dimensional grid. And the already existing three-dimensional grid is not so spacious. As I told you, it is subdivided into floors, and the floors, 3 meters from floor to floor distances that are virtually not enough for contemporary technology. So in order to create variety, as I showed you in the presentation, we had to introduce a variety of volumes: a narrow space, a spacious space, a shallow space, a wide space. You know, also changing changing drastically the textures of and the colors of the spaces. We created a variety inside the building, and probably that's all of a sudden the whole building became a big container for exhibition, because a lot of the exhibits use the whole building, not only you know, they not only use the gallery space, but most of them use the whole building. And there the variety comes in handy.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Göksun, if I may continue, I can also ask Mehmet Bey if you would be open to answer questions not directly related to this building, but as general questions that were asked by our students.
Yes, of course, why not?
Yeah. In general, like most of them are very curious about your experience in founding and also managing an architectural firm that started in Ankara and then moved Istanbul. And again, almost all detected a certain kind of language in all of your buildings. I wouldn't use the word style, but they observed that even though the functions, the context, the scale of the buildings are very varied, there is a certain language that they could detect from the details or from the dispositions of the masses and etc. So maybe again, how did you manage to have kind of a language as a firm or as an architect? But however you wish, you can respond to that question.
Okay. So the first question was how we founded this architectural firm, I guess. Well, we don't do competitions very often. We are not automatic competitors. We are not competition machines. But we do once in 2-3 years, some important competitions, and we were, you know, lucky and successful enough to win those competitions, and that's how we could, you know, put the foundations of this firm. But it's not enough. You cannot, especially in Turkey, maybe in Switzerland or Germany, that's the only means to get commissions, competitions. But in Turkey, it's not like that. Competitions is just like a supporting act. And on top of that, you need a lot of resilience in order to realize your works. You know, we really worked, you know. If it was an ordinary, let's say, architectural firm, maybe it wouldn't be built, because we stepped out of our confines and our professional, let's say, responsibility region in order to get those buildings built, maybe some of them in very bad quality. Think of the Naval Museum, for example, in Beşiktaş.
Oh, it was one of the most popular buildings amongst our students.
Yeah,
like we received a lot of.
So it is, but it is built very bad. It's the contractor, the municipality, the fight between the Navy and the municipality, and a horrible contractor. They even used wrong materials. They did not even let us in the construction site. So it's built horribly, but it's at least built. I had to go to the mayor 5 or 6 times because the steel construction was rotting outside, and they were not. The construction was stopped for several times, and I had to beg money for that very bad contractor so that they could at least cover up the structure so that it doesn't rust and eventually get built. So I think we showed a lot of resilience, a lot of, let's say, strength, will to build what we wish to build. And it's an important thing. But also, we also showed a lot of interest to different topics and different ideas, urban ideas, and we even came up with a variety of building programs, some of them very small, some of them very large. So we made it like a big discursive studio inside our office, so that people are involved, young generations are involved, and we learned all from each other, we transformed each other, and that's how we built this thing. The other question or comment is interesting because I mean, there is no apparent stylistic or visual unity among our work. They look so different from each other because they derive their, let's say, physicality from their existing conditions or context of the problems, and we let it open. We do not, let's say, we don't like to restrain the concepts via stylistic, let's say, burdens. We lift these burdens and we let the concepts, find their own ways. But deep down, there's this approach thing is, there is this deep down, you feel like there is a certain approach to problems or recreating problems, but it's not usually so manifest from the objects that we produce, from physical design, right? And this approach we developed throughout years together with the people that we are collaborating inside the office. There's a certain approach, definitely. Not any approach. It's not like anything goes in our office. But there is discussion, and we would like to let the end open, like an open discussion. Okay?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe Melis just detect or somehow felt that shared approach of yours in your project because she posed that question.
Yes. Interesting.
Yeah. And you, I was just going to say, you actually even answered some questions about Deniz Müzesi, but we may continue with that. Göksun, you were saying something, sorry.
No, I was saying that was the highlight of the questions. Maybe it is also because our school is
very close.
Southern campus is neighboring the building. So some students have noticed that the building does face the square, Barbaros Square, but it doesn't build any relationship, any physical relationship, or there is no access from the square. So some students question that issue. So maybe you can elaborate on the problems you faced with the construction, or I don't know how you would like to answer that.
Yeah. You know, this building, the Deniz Müzesi, it's actually, it has three sides, right? One is facing what we call the boulevard along the coast.
Dolmabahçe Avenue.
Dolmabahçe, yes, Dolmabahçe Avenue, right? So that's one important part where the entry is, and the other main opening is to Bosphorus, like the warehouses in a shipyard, right? And the third, which is, let's say, in a lesser degree facing the square, where Barbaros statue is. So, but it's also, it is framing that statue via this courtyard in between the existing building on the corner and the new building that we designed for the boat gallery. So that courtyard is framing certain features in the square, but there's but it's not an entry to the museum, because you can only have one entry to the museum. We actually wanted to introduce another entry to this one via this cafe, but you know, it's very strict with the soldiers and the Navy. They even wanted to put a gate in the middle of the square facing Dolmabahçe Avenue, right? Because we pulled the building a little back, so it became like a back drop for the corner building. So we pulled it back, but we also gave the square in front of it to public that is facing Beşiktaş, Çarşı, right? But that was the military, some part, a large portion of that urban space belonged to the Navy. So they wanted to mark it with fences. And, you know, maybe it took 10 years to build that. And within those 10 years, I don't know how many generals came and went. They come and go, right? So each general, we had to argue that we should not put fences there. It was so difficult. And also, where the boat gallery is facing Bosphorus, they wanted to put fences, and we said, okay, we design a core, but no fences, please. So we had to fight really hard for that core without any, but we could not win that for the courtyard, because the courtyard, now there is another cafe there, right? They wanted to use the courtyard, and there was a second chance to make it public, but they did not let us do it. We designed it how many times, that entry to the courtyard, but it did not happen. Certain things it's not so easy to win certain wars. That was the thing about the courtyard. Was there another question?
Actually, there are many questions, but we tried to group them, and maybe it contributes to your presentation. The students have noticed that your projects, all the projects, somehow refer to the context, and they have posed specific questions about specific buildings and their relationship you try to build with the context. So I think we don't have much time to go through each of them, but I think we can highlight that because we asked students to go through your office website and look up your project. So I think that was a common ground that all the students mentioned somehow, and they are impressed with that. And maybe Semra, you can ask the last one.
Yeah, we have another group of questions, which will be the final one, Mehmet Bey, so that we can continue our evening, maybe by eating. Of course, poignantly, in the wake of the last pandemic, even further restrictions, students are curious about your ideas or reflections about the possible impacts of pandemic conditions, both on your work life, like both on your projects, and also your ideas about how this pandemic condition could change the housing and also living spaces and also the public spaces, use of public spaces in the urban context. So there is this twofold questions about pandemic conditions, and of course you can give examples if you it is also a very curious topic that if you designed a building or have any design object, something for the particularly pandemic conditions and how it changed your approach to that project. So the topic is pandemic, basically.
Yes. Okay. I mean, this pandemic situation is such a shocking situation for all of us that we automatically we think, it makes enormous changes in our understanding of how we do things, and we really try hard to come up with a very clever idea to respond to this shock. But I must say, I haven't found it. Other than, okay, we don't build doors for the toilets, we don't touch anything type of things. I haven't still heard or thought about anything revolutionary. Of course, there are, listen, I spent 8 months in Dacia from March, and I just came 2 weeks ago. and we worked separately. I mean, I worked from Dacia without going to the office, and I arrived. I came here to Istanbul, and I haven't gone to the office even once. So it has been almost 9 months that I'm not going to the office. But you know, this was managed. Okay, we were productive, but this was managed because we spent before pandemic so much time together. We transformed each other and we understand each other really well, so that even though we are not facing and we are not eye to eye, we are not facing each other, we can still produce. But I don't think that's sustainable because we have new coming generations, and I feel like I need to, you know, spend some time face to face, eye to eye, so that we can develop and keep transforming, right? That also applies to urban interactions and communications. A lot of communications. At that point, I would not desire to get carried away by pandemic, let's say, pandemic claustrophobia, right? That's not nice. But uh, but on the other hand, there are some practicalities. Let's say people were traveling too much or spending so much useless time to many meetings, to commuting and these things. And now we spend much less energy and meaningful time. We can spend a lot more meaningful time to actual production of things. I think this experience would enhance our awareness of what real production is and what waste of time we had before. That's important, I think.
Okay, thank you very much, Mehmet Bey, and thank you for all of our audiences. We spent great time, albeit it is virtually. I feel like I've been to Istiklal once again because I haven't been there, as you also mentioned, for longer than 9 months. So let's hope we will be able to again have the chance to experience your projects and Istiklal Street and all the other parts of the city, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting. It was a pleasure for me. Next time, face to face, inshallah, at school.
Inshallah.
Yeah. Hopefully, inshallah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to also thank a lot. And I remember that hopeful moment when the building opened during these bombing events.
Exactly.
So thank you for bringing that experience to such an urban scale for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to hear that. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for this delightful presentation. It's been great having you here. We have a little tradition here in ArchiDesign Talks. As Bahçeşehir University Faculty of Architecture and Design, we donate to TEMA in our guest's name. So now you have 5 young trees in a memorial forest in Eskişehir. So thank you so much for your time and effort.
That was a pleasure for me. Thank you for the present.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much once
Have
again.
Have a nice evening for everyone.
Yeah, from me too.
Thank you.